The Data Chief is a podcast for data and analytics leaders to share their personal stories and insights on technology, culture, and leadership. Welcome to The Data Chief.
Welcome to The Data Chief. I'm your host, Cindy Housen. Today, we're joined by Moe Kiss, Director of Data Science for Marketing at Canva and host of the Analytics Power Hour podcast. Canva is the global visual communication platform empowering millions to design anything from anywhere. In her role, Moe brings together data, marketing, and storytelling to help Canva scale its growth and connect with users around the world. In this episode, we'll explore how data is shaping modern marketing, how to build trust in data at scale, and what it takes to lead with empathy in a high-growth environment. Moe, welcome to the Data Chief.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm incredibly excited to be here.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the agentic analytics platform company that is redefining how the world interacts with data. With ThoughtSpot's intuitive natural language search and agentic AI, every user can access transparent, governed, AI-powered insights when and where they need them. Learn why industry leaders like Cisco, Toyota, Hyatt, and Capital One rely on ThoughtSpot. Experience the new era of analytics at ThoughtSpot.com.
We're excited to have you. Now, where in the world are you joining us from today, Moe?
I am coming from Sydney, Australia, so you might pick up a little bit of a strange accent during the show.
Oh, not strange at all. I love when I get to visit Sydney, the waterfront by the Opera House, just gorgeous. But I've yet to climb the bridge, the Harbor Bridge. Have you done that?
I actually haven't. It's on my bucket list for sure, though. I'm a little scared of heights, but I feel like it's one of those things that everybody has to do at some point in their life.
Yeah, same. So Canva, of course, is a household name, but tell us a little bit about your role there.
Sure. So I actually started at Canva in 2019. So I have definitely been around long enough to know where all the good snacks are. It was a very different company when I started. We were 500 people, and now we're over 5,000. But I would say that the culture is still the same, and that we just continue to hire like the most amazing, wonderful people ever. It's truly been the biggest professional gift of my life coming at Canva when I did. So I joined the marketing data team very quickly. I was a team of one. So it was just me and the team. And then we scaled up to about 30. And so we have a pretty big footprint across data science and analytics engineering. And we look after everything from, sort of like the insight side of the house. We build a lot of our own like tooling and data products to do with marketing measurement. So it's been a really fun journey to be on with Canva because, as you can imagine, like the company has just grown and scaled in the time that I've been there. And then the industry itself has been incredibly interesting. Marketing measurement has been through a full evolution in the last 5 or 6 years. So I feel like I'm still learning lots.
Yeah. So a 10x growth in Canva, a 30x growth in the data science team. And yes, marketing analytics has changed a lot. But I think we can also say data, analytics, and AI has changed a lot in those 7 years. As you think about your overall career journey, you've also had different roles working for government and now for a high-tech startup. How do you see that those roles have shaped your journey thus far?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I would say I have a very different background. I feel lots of people sort of my age or, who've been in the industry as long as I we've all come from different places into data. And it's really interesting because the folks that I hire now are coming in with degrees. It's something that they've studied at university. They have a specialist skill. And my experience was just very different to that. I actually studied criminology and politics, of all things, and worked for the state government first. And when I explain all the weird and wonderful career transitions I've had, it makes intuitive sense. But when you look at my resume, it's quite confusing. But yeah, I basically went from sort of doing like frontline government services in criminology And then I just kept looking around being like, no, wait, I want to write the policy that's informing these services. And I went to Canberra, which is sort of our equivalent to Washington, DC. It's the home of our government. Went to Canberra and I was like, I'm going to write policy. And then I was like, oh, data informs policy. I want to go work in data now. And then that led me to another federal government agency. And then from there, it actually was a much smaller jump than I probably expected into sort of the tech scene. Definitely had to teach myself programming along the way, which was pretty terrifying. But it just goes to show that, there isn't really a traditional path in data. If I had to say why I ended up in data, it's actually because I love people, which sounds really counterintuitive. But I think at the heart of it, we use data so that we can understand people better. And that's probably something that I wish I'd known in high school when I felt that there was like this real conflict between social sciences and math and science. And if anything, I'm probably an example that those two things work really well together.
I think they do work really well together. And I would also say using data in politics, there's a lot of politics with data, and data can be power. Knowledge is power, and that knowledge comes from data. So I think that diverse background, I can imagine it has served you very, very well. And you also mentioned the shift to marketing analytics. So how did you acquire these skills? Did you do formal learning? Is it more on-the-job learning? What's been your playbook there?
It really has mostly been kind of on-the-job learning in reality. I have done some extra courses. I'm a pretty prolific reader, but I feel like most people, right? We learn by doing, and that's definitely been the case for me. I think the people that are drawn to data are often the folks that do love learning because there is so much change and the methodologies are always changing and evolving. And so I find the folks that are really successful in data are the ones that just have this hunger to keep learning and advancing their skills over time.
Yeah. And I think likewise, I'm a prolific reader. So my early days, it was reading these books on a 2-hour commute on a train. So I get that. As you also mentioned, the way we use marketing data has changed. And you really use this to understand the Canva customers, the Canva users. Tell us a little bit about how you use it, but also how it's changed in the digital era.
Yeah, I would say the biggest change has been really the shift from attribution. I think there was this kind of desire 10, 15 years ago, this myth that we could know everything about the user, right? Like that we could follow every click that they did across the internet. And the reality is like in a much more privacy and compliance-centric role, like that's just not possible. And I do call it a myth for a reason. I don't think it was ever possible, truly. And we kind of went down that path for a long time of building out attribution models. And I don't always think we made the best decisions from them. I think the reason that I have stayed in marketing data now for so long, and I still love it so deeply, is because the way that we've evolved our measurement techniques in particular, we're going back to sort of more experimentations and holdout groups. And yes, that word MMMs, which I love, marketing mix models or media mix models, depending who you ask. And it's just, I think the thing that I really like about it is the fact that now we're trying to understand groups of users and their intent. And to me, that I feel that's giving a greater service to the users as well, because we're truly trying to like understand how we can better meet their product needs. And so there is that kind of like really, I guess, technical nitty-gritty, where should we spend the next dollar? But then there's also, I think, one of the really wonderful things that we're really seeing is that pulling together of data and research so that we can better understand the users and how they want to use the product.
Yeah. And so when you talk about this marketing mix, I'm thinking of a Canva billboard ad that I saw in an airport that I was recently in. And so, of course, your CMO is going to want to know how many people walked by that billboard ad versus maybe an Instagram ad that how many people clicked on that, or a Facebook ad, how many people clicked on that. And so how do you balance the data-driven decision-making or when it's a lack of data?
I'm going to give you a little crazy analogy. If you're cooking a meal, I love to cook, and there's kind of like two ends. So at one end, the data is the salt or the herbs that you throw in at the end of the meal. And the other end is where you become almost paralyzed and you can't make a decision without data. And I've seen both ends of the spectrum. I think the real sweet spot for us is when it's part of the meal. And I think that's something at Canva that I've really observed, and I want to call out, like, Mel, our founder, just has this incredible intuition for our users and their needs, and is a really strong kind of advocate for listening to what our users need. And so in that environment, data is part of the meal of decision making. So it might be the potatoes, and then, you have some intuition, which is your protein and that sort of thing. And when you pull those things together to make a decision, I think that's kind of the ideal outcome. And that's not to say that either end of the spectrum is like right or wrong, but I do feel like we, and even now, are going more and more in terms of like data being part of the meal, and that's kind of the space that we want to be in.
So it's both. It's really both. You're not always going to have data on everything. Sometimes it's intuition and that experimentation, as well as the data. And of course, you're making us all hungry now. But the other challenge that you have, I would say many new marketers coming into this field, they appreciate data, but for others, it's been scarier. They're more on the creative side. How have you made data approachable to everyone?
I think data is about creativity, I suppose, and it's not lost on me. So one of the topics that I got really interested in probably sort of 10, 15 years ago was about data visualization. It's something to this day that I'm still super passionate about. And folks in my team will know that, like, when I open up a presentation that they put together, I'll be like, oh, this should be aligned here, and this word needs to go there, and this visualization needs this. And folks will often be like, Mo, can you talk to me about the content? Not about how it looks. And I'll be like, no, but how it looks matters, because it's not about it being pretty, it's about being understood. And so for me, when we've worked really closely with our creative folks or our brand marketers, it's about bringing those two things together. And I used Canva long before I even worked here. And it's because I do care about that really strong narrative and the story that you can build. And if anything, I see data as such a big complement to creative folks to help them understand what's working with our users and the direction we want to go in. And I think we definitely have a very more of an experiment culture and testing ideas, and we're willing to take creative risks. And so we kind of get to be that partner to them to be like, yeah, this is a risk worth taking. I would say, like, part of it is my love of storytelling and visualization, but I also think it comes down to good relationships. There's the old adage of people don't trust the numbers, they trust the person. And you see it time and time again. I'm constantly working with my team of how are you going to build trust with this stakeholder? How are you going to get them to give you a seat at the table, to listen when you have a recommendation? And I think to go back to what we were talking about before, it is about people.
So let's pull on this thread a little bit. You elaborated, it's not only about how it looks, it's about the data storytelling here. Can you give an example of the difference between just a visualization and the story around it and the impact that it had?
Absolutely. My favorite is what we call like a McKinsey headline or an insights headline. Nothing makes me more frustrated when I see a visualization and the title on the slide will be user growth over time. And I'll be like, cool, that's telling me what the graph is showing. That's telling me the data points. That's not telling me why I should pay attention to it. And so when you change that to an insights heading, it might be user growth peaked in 2024 due to this campaign that we ran. And then people can straight away look at your slide and be like, this is why you're showing me these numbers, because you're drawing the connection between what they should take away from it. And then the thing that's really beautiful about that is the next step, which is what should they do, what action should they take, is really easy to pull as the next thread. Like that's normally the next slide of like, okay, I've shared this insight with you that a particular campaign we ran in 2024 was really good at driving user growth. So then the next thing will be like, well, what were the attributes or the things about that campaign that made it successful? So then the next step after that is, how do we do that again? Or let's look at our current campaigns and see if they have those same components that we can tweak. And so for me, the insights heading is the absolute easiest way to really draw out and get people thinking about why you're sharing the data points that you're sharing.
Yeah, those are great specifics, Mo. It's the what and the why, and then what to do. Invest more in this campaign, repeat that best practice, or drop this other campaign. So this data storytelling is clearly one skill that you recommend data and analytics professionals continue to invest in. As Canva and you ramp and invest in AI, what are some of the other skills where you think people need to spend more time honing?
Yeah, that's one that's always top of my mind. If I had to boil it down to a couple of things, I do think programming is still incredibly important, especially for folks that are starting out. If you have a good foundation in like SQL and Python or R, it just opens the door, especially SQL. Like SQL is the language of data in my mind, and it's very difficult to access data and to use it well without some type of programming skills. And obviously folks who are learning programming languages now are so lucky because there are so many wonderful tools that you can use to help do that. I think a base in statistics is becoming more important, and that's because we are leveraging AI tools more. And so understanding what's under the hood, I would say, is more essential than ever. But I do always just come back to the soft skills. An example of that is knowing the business appetite. You need to know how to get the answer with the right level of certainty, or uncertainty as the case may be, for the decision that you're making at pace with the business. And I feel like that's the thing that we're often trying to sort of coach younger folks in the team on, is really developing that muscle to know, okay, we're making a small decision here. Maybe we don't need a huge experiment. Maybe we can do some causal inference. We can go back to another piece of analysis and apply those learnings, and we can make that decision quickly. And then we can check post and see, did it work out as we expected? Or did it completely deviate from what we expected? Or are we talking about, an investment decision of $200 million and it's going to drive our business strategy for the next 3 years, and we need a lot of certainty here. And that's when you should be using your more robust methodologies. So, but again, that's a skill that you learn over time. I don't think that's something that you can just teach or know walking out of university.
Although I think you started with relationships and trust. I think a really operative phrase you had here was at pace with the business. When a data analyst or data scientist is starting out and is more risk averse, they're going to seek perfection over progress or directionally accurate. And 3 weeks is too late. If they made the decision 3 weeks ago, sorry, now it's like, who cares? So I think that at pace with the business is really key. The other thing is, how important is it? How big a decision is it? And getting that collaboration there. I want to come back, though, because you said a skill that's important to learn is some of the programming skills, whether it's SQL, Python, or R. So I want to push back here because some leaders, Satya Nadella, one of them, is saying, no, why would you learn this? You now have AI or NLP, all these chatbots to help you with this. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, it's a controversial one. What I'm seeing is that there are a lot of ways that now we can engage with AI tools in natural language, and that is a wonderful thing. But it's very difficult as the data person to know the quality of the answers that you're getting back if you don't understand what's under the hood. And so an example is I'm not the best programmer ever. Sometimes when I do programming, my team are like, please step away from the computer slowly. That's not your job anymore, which is very, very entertaining. But I know enough that I know the right prompts to give, and I know how to QA if what I'm getting back is not correct. And I think that's one of the things that we still fundamentally need data folks for, because if your level of skill is the same as your stakeholders in this space, how are you going to guide them when what you're getting back is rubbish? So you still need enough knowledge that you can be critical of the responses that you're getting. And I don't think you can do that without understanding how it works. But it definitely is a topic that's being hotly debated at the moment.
Yeah, so I agree with that some people need to know it to vet it, and that transparency builds the trust. I definitely don't want my business people learning that. And there is a fear that if entry-level people don't learn these skills, then we're going to have a whole generation of fewer people to vet these models or vet these answers. So it is an interesting situation we're creating.
It is.
The other thing that I've heard you talk about, and this is the importance of buy versus build. How has your thinking changed over time here?
Is it just me, or is everything in the data space a little bit controversial? Because this one can be too. I'm not sure my perspective has changed per se. I probably just have more information or more experiences to reference now. One of the things that we've experienced at Canva is often just the size. You know, in our data warehouse, we have over 70,000 tables. You know, we have over 240 million monthly active users. 373 designs are created every second. So you think about the volume. And often when it comes to tooling, what's ended up being a blocker for us is that something that we may have purchased 6-7 years ago just doesn't scale with our business anymore, particularly if it's a consumption model. And so one of the challenges that we've had to navigate is like, when do you go from buying a tool to potentially upgrading to more of an enterprise tool? And when do you go, actually, it's best just to build this in-house because of our size and to be able to really create a product that suits our needs? It's definitely, I don't think there is a right answer on buy versus build. It really just comes down to what is the business case. And one of the things that I've observed in the data space anyway, it can be really sexy to build your own tool. But again, I'm always going to be the pragmatic person who's kind of like, well, what moves with the pace of the business? If it's going to take us 12 to 18 months to build this thing and we can buy something off the shelf for a comparatively lower price, I'm always going to be the person that's like, let's buy the thing off the shelf. We need to make sure that we factor in the implementation costs, which people never do. They always just assume that you buy a tool and you plug it in and it all just works. And we all know that's not the case. There are so many different factors that it's never one size fits all. It always comes down to, is there a specific need? What's the cost benefit trade-off? You know, is it something that you need a lot of speed for, that you need to get to your stakeholders really quickly? Or is it something that you need to get really right? In which case you might want to build it.
Yeah, I think it's that cost benefit and time to market that you alluded to. I also think when you talked about scale, it was interesting. You were not talking necessarily product scaling. It was more consumption-based licensing. So is this one of the challenges with some of the cloud solutions that everyone thought, great, pay as you go is a good thing, but now it is, you do have to watch. We need more FinOps, better disciplines around, was that a good query, or am I idling things, or am I applying the right size? So is this just another learning in a cloud-based world?
I think so. And it does come back to that question that you had about programming, right? Like, if you're using an AI agent to basically ask a very simple question that's using a lot of compute, is that something that you could write in 3 lines of SQL that, you know, you can just run against your own database that would be significantly cheaper? And so the cost is definitely a factor that we all have to consider, because I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And you don't realize that this one method may be substantially more expensive than this other method. And so it does often come down to like, how do you pre-aggregate or build things in a way that can be consumed easily if it's something that we need to reference over and over and over again so that you really cut down those costs. But again, there's never one size fits all. It's something that's definitely top of mind for us, is how we can reduce cost. But at the same token, you don't want to over optimize, because there can be situations where it's like, okay, we have all these tables. We're going to get all these analytics engineers. We're going to get them to optimize the code. They spend 2 months working on it. And you're like, and they've saved like a minute of runtime, and that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. So it all comes down to cost benefit, right?
Yeah, definitely. Cost benefit and time to market. And so another evolution, you mentioned AI, and did the AI create efficient code or insights? But now as we move beyond just dashboards and maybe static dashboards, it's really about decisions. How do you see AI shifting the role of marketing teams and the way they approach data?
I do think it makes it more accessible. The idea that, stakeholders will always say to you, like, oh, I've got a silly question. And, you'll be like, there's no silly questions. But there is something kind of nice when you can ask a silly question that's not to a person. So I do think it gives folks a level of accessibility that we didn't have previously. But the devil's in the detail, right? Like, we're experimenting with so many different types of AI tooling across our team. We have a very decentralized team, so lots of folks are building different AI tools across the company. And there is a component of making sure the underlying data is correct. And that's where I do think it can be quite difficult, is that stakeholders don't always have that kind of like intuition or that understanding of what the right answer should be. And that's why it really does come down to like a partnership where you can help validate your thinking, or this is what I got, does this make sense, that sort of thing. But it does also mean that there is becoming more of a role for need to have some centralized functions or centralized data sets that, data teams in-house can confidently say, we're really comfortable with the output of this. And so by all means, go self-serve, ask the questions that you want. But unfortunately, that is not like the sexy, exciting work that people always want to hear about. It's definitely the behind-the-scenes work that you have to do to make AI really work.
Yeah. So is this also, if I think back to some of the growth metrics that you stated at the beginning, is this the constant tug between centralized for reusability, data quality, economies of scale, but decentralized per function or business unit so you can go really fast? Is that something also that has shifted over time?
I ask this question whenever I meet a data person from another company. I'm like, centralized, decentralized, what are your thoughts? Give me your opinions and learnings. It just depends. There isn't a right answer. I wish there was a right answer and someone would tell me what it is. There are pros and cons to both. And I think the decentralized model definitely gives you that speed. And my own lived experience is that it also drives what I would call, I don't know if innovation is the right word, but it has given my team in particular a lot of space to really test ideas and build things. And that has made their jobs more enjoyable, right? Versus like a central team building out all these tools that you only just get to use. You get to try to build them yourself. And I think there's a lot of professional development gains in it, but it also makes things really difficult when you talk about, a foundational data set and where it sits and who owns it and how it gets maintained. And so if I had to pick my like absolute perfect structure based on that, it would be a balance of the both. Like, you want some things that are decentralized so you can move fast, and you need some core areas of the business that have more of a central or, a team responsible for it to make sure that it has the level of integrity and quality that you need.
Yes, I agree. It needs to be both. You don't want chaos and you don't want duplication of efforts, but you also don't want least common denominator deliverables. As you think about Canva and the fact that you are both B2C and B2B, organizations and individuals, companies of all sizes use the platform globally. And there are so many different privacy laws. We have GDPR, we have CCP. With AI, now there's additional laws per country. How do you see marketing analytics navigating this in your desire to understand the different types of users and customers?
One of the favorite jokes the head of measurement in my team makes is, it would be so much easier if we were just selling socks. The reality is if you are, you have like a traditional e-com type business, marketing measurement is really easy. Well, I backtrack. It's not really easy. It's more simple. There's not as much noise. In our business, it is really complex. We do have a B2C arm of the business, and it does make it incredibly complex from a measurement perspective and a compliance perspective. But what I would say has been beneficial is it's really evolved our measurement approach, which is that when the business looks simple, it's easier to have a more simple solution. And so what we've intentionally done is measurement is not one tool. It's a suite of tools. And we use a suite of different techniques for the business question that we're trying to answer. So if we're talking, say, about our B2C arm, then we're going to use our MMM because we're operating in a series of different markets. All those markets are really unique, really different. They all have different activity that's in those markets at any given time. And so that's the right approach combined with different experimentation and brand tracking for those particular efforts. When it comes down to, say, our enterprise side of the business, we use a completely different suite of tools. And part of that is we have less data because we haven't been doing it as long. Part of it is you have a smaller subset of users. And so you can't make the same generalizations that you could make with hundreds of millions of users. And so we have been on a real journey with our marketing team over the last kind of 5 years to really get them to understand that there's a suite of tools. We tier our tools. So we have like the gold standard, the silver standard, the bronze standard. And we really work with them to understand that, like, what's the business question and what's the best tool? Does that make our life more difficult? Absolutely, because you're in this constant discussion with your stakeholders about the right tool. And, that creates noise, but it definitely does feel like the right approach for the complexity of the business that we have.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've often said it's the right tool for the right use case and the right persona. They'll have different requirements. I also think, Moe, we've talked a lot about Canva and your role there, but you also give back to the community with your own podcast, the Analytics Power Hour. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So I was a lonely analyst working at an e-com retailer, and I had some friends in the US reach out about a podcast, and my guttural reaction was, have you made a mistake? Absolutely not. I am not the right person for this. And they got me on to do sort of a guest show. And lo and behold, we've been running the podcast for over 10 years now. And it's been, I would say, the biggest gift to my career. Because folks will always say to me, they're like, oh, Moe, how do you keep up on what's going on in the industry and different techniques and that sort of thing? And the podcast has been the way that I've kept learning because we get all these wonderful guests on. We're constantly talking about, the latest and greatest idea in data. And that has really helped me professionally. I do also often use the show to discuss any particular challenges that I'm facing. So you'll always understand what I'm grappling with at any given point in time because it often becomes a topic on the show. The latest hot topic that everyone's talking about is semantic layers and semantic views. So yes, so it'll probably come up on the show soon just because it ends up being a way that I can process my thinking kind of live on air for folks too.
Yeah. No, 10 years. Congratulations. That's fantastic. So that was even before like podcasting. I think so many started during the pandemic. The Data Chief, we recorded the first episode December 2019. So you were doing podcasting before it was mainstream. I'm chuckling with semantic layers because, of course, so my last article was semantic layers are suddenly sexy, even though they've been around for 30 years. And then the debate was, well, should we be talking ontologies versus semantics? And I'm like, are we overcomplicating it here? Who needs to capture it? Where do we store it? So what is your hot take on semantics, or should I say ontologies?
It's funny. I think we have very similar views. I kind of keep throwing my hands up in the air and being like, this isn't a silver bullet. We've been doing this forever. This is the same thing. Like, it's no different to a metrics platform or even a store schema. Like, it's understanding the relationships between data sets so that we can better use them. But I think in this wave of AI that a lot of folks are kind of seeing it as, here is the silver bullet that's going to solve all of our challenges about how we structure our data well for AI tools. And so it's definitely something that I'm giving a lot of thought to. I don't know where I'll land yet, but I'll probably be talking about it on the podcast soon.
Yeah, good. We'll look forward to that and cross-link to that. I do think a timely announcement, though, that I think is good for the industry is Snowflake's open semantic interchange, like the idea that different tools can learn to speak a common language is a good thing for everyone. Do you have an opinion here?
I 100% agree. I also love anything that ends up becoming open source. I think there is it's just the best thing that will drive thinking in our community, right? Is if different folks from different companies can really give it a stab and a try and build on it. It's wonderful for folks in the team who can build on open source technology. And it's something that we've definitely been supportive of as well. So big +1 for me.
Yeah, that's good. Mo, I feel like we could keep going, but we're going to shift to a lightning round. So short questions, fun questions, off the beaten path questions. How about a book or a podcast besides the Analytics Power Hour that has had a big impact on your approach to work or life?
So her name is Taylor Bunacore-Guthrie. She actually was a guest on the podcast because I heard her speak at a Women in Analytics conference. She's a professional facilitator. But the podcast episode we did with her was about asking better questions. And Taylor and I are still really good friends. We catch up regularly, but her perspective on how you can use questions has, I think it has fundamentally changed every coaching relationship I have. So that's what we call our managers or coaches. And also my relationships with stakeholders, because it's taught me different techniques for learning more information, which is often what data folks are often like, how do I get more context on this situation? How do I really understand what the business problem is versus the data point that I've been asked to give? And she just has this whole framework about different types of questions that I would say has fundamentally changed my career. I've got a slide of hers with all of the questions, which is actually a screensaver on my laptop. So,
oh, excellent. Okay, we will definitely link to that. How about a technology or innovation that at first you're like, oh, this is such a gimmick, but now you can't live without it?
Oh, such a gimmick. I think I would say it really wasn't a gimmick, but I learned to program in R at the time that R was like the cool language before Python became the fun one. And I just remember the feeling of being so confused and it just didn't make intuitive sense to me. So I wouldn't say it was a gimmick, but I probably struggled to understand why do other folks love this so much? What I don't get it. And then of course, months later the penny drops and you're like, oh, this is why everyone loves it.
All right, Mo, I feel like I should also ask, who is the better coffee, Melbourne or Sydney?
Oh, it's definitely Melbourne. Definitely Melbourne.
Oh, I'm thinking our SE, James Belzy, will really appreciate that. He's taken me to a super cool coffee place. It might be called the Luna Cafe, but now I'm not sure. All right, we'll end with, if you think in the last week, what is a happy memory you've experienced from the last week that you'd like to share with listeners?
We've just had a wonderful weekend of weather in Sydney, Australia, and I decided to just spend the whole weekend doing what my kids wanted. No, I've got this motto of try to say yes to your kids as much as you possibly can. And so I just had, honestly, such a beautiful weekend getting to do the things with them that they loved. It made you realize, in data, we're not saving lives. Well, some folks actually genuinely are saving lives, but I'm not in one of those roles. And being able to have a weekend like that means that I can be my best self during the week for my team.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Mo. And thank you for being on the Data Chief podcast.
Thanks for having me. I've absolutely loved it.
Thank you for joining the Data Chief as we explore data and AI leadership. To continue your journey, subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening platform and connect with me on LinkedIn or X at BI Scorecard. If you are loving this podcast, please rate or review it so others can also discover the podcast.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the agentic analytics platform company built for everyone to create personalized insights, drive decisions, and take action. Learn how companies like Lyft, Brambles, and Navan are leading the way at ThoughtSpot.com.